Sorry for the wait since last video. I believe it's been almost a month now. Well, for this video, I'm going to try doing something I don't usually do. I'm going to try recording without a script. I already done three takes of this, but I hope it'll end well. Alright, let me set the scene for you first. It's late at night, or rather, you've crossed the border between midnight and dawn. The daybreak is swiftly approaching. You're watching television because there's nothing else to do this late. It's a public service announcement, it seems. As the screen goes white, it then displays a view of the city. It seems like a normal announcement at first, but then you see a list of names slowly go up, glide upwards on the screen, and you wonder what the meaning of this broadcast is. There doesn't seem to be any sort of identification of what it really is, what the meaning is, and you're not sure what kind of announcement it's trying to do. But you see the names, and you see the ages of the people go past. Some of them are adults, some of them are elderly, some of them seem to be adolescents. Finally, it seems like it ends. And the last things that flash on the screen are the lines, "These are today's victims. Good night." What I've described to you is known as the NNN special broadcast, and it's a Japanese urban legend that late at night, a mysterious broadcast may appear on your TV, listing the names of quote-unquote victims, people that will die the next morning. Of course it's false, no one is actually taking recordings of this, but I'm interested in this urban legend because I've always been at least a little bit afraid of televisions. If you're American, you probably know what the EAS is, the Emergency Alert Service. You're probably familiar with watching TV in the evening and hearing the "ah" noises break the silence of your room and completely shatter your ears. And it's terrifying too because it's a very old system that was recorded a long time ago, and you're probably very familiar with the automated voice that appears during the broadcast as well. And like, you always expect it to be something serious, but for me it was always, or in my childhood, it was always for flood warnings, which, well, I'm inside anyways. I'm not going to be in the car during this rainstorm, but it's terrifying if you've heard it. So I've always been a little bit afraid of TV and kind of new technologies around us too. My last video was about the internet. And so that brings us to the topic of today's video, which is the Japanese aesthetic known as Denpa. Denpa literally means electric wave, electromagnetic wave, like the ones transmitted on telephone poles, power lines, etc. And its origins go back to 1981 in an event known as the Fukugawa street killings, in which 4 citizens were stabbed by a Japanese man who claimed that he was being controlled by electromagnetic waves. So the meaning of the Denpa aesthetic is kind of electricity, radio, magnetic, those kinds of waves, 5G, and kind of the effect it has psychologically, I'd say, on human beings, which of course is fiction. There's no one is actually being controlled by electric waves, but so it's very connected to like mental illness, to imagine that you're being controlled, that your thoughts are not your own. In schizophrenia especially, I know about the influencing machine theory. Many schizophrenic patients believe that their thoughts are not their own and their actions are not their own, and they're being controlled by a machine, which may or may not be operated by like the doctors and specialists working at the psychological ward. So they believe that, once again, it links to their delusions of persecution, as well as their kind of like hallucinatory delusion, or things like that. I'm not an expert on these things, but like that idea has always interested me. I'm very into like psychological illnesses, mental illnesses. I took psychology in high school. I got a 4 on the AP test. I guess it could be seen as a future career path, but I'm not sure if I want to study that in college. And I believe that like mentally ill people make the best art as well. Of course, you don't need to be mentally ill to make art, but people like Van Gogh, I can't name any other examples. And in many psych wards, they have artists' wings in which psychologically mentally ill patients can kind of recreate their feelings through art. And of course, the influencing machine I talked about is common in those pictures. So I guess Denpa is connected to the influencing machine in that, like, all the radio waves, electromagnetic signals, television, radio, electricity, things like that are having influences on the minds of human beings. And this is connected to otaku culture as well. Many Denpa works are connected to otaku culture, such as Welcome to the NHK, which is about hikikomori, a shut-in basically, that abuses drugs and hallucinates. And there's also works like Chaos Head, which is made by the same company. I'm not sure if they share a universe with Steins Gate, in which, I'm not sure if I can spoil this or not. The main character is first of all, he experiences vivid hallucinations. Second of all, he's hallucinating that a character from an anime goes to school with him. So, indeed, Denpa has a connection with otaku culture as well, which is also interesting to me. There's also Denpa music, which sounds like you're having a lobotomy done. Groups like EAS, which do Toho works, making music that is virtually unlistenable by normal standards, but still very like catchy, kind of like hyperpop. But even though the otaku culture is part of it, I really like the psychological aspect of it as well. Things about like technology and the effects it can have psychologically, like what iPads can do to kids, the mental strain that technology has had, not just on me, but on entire generations of people. I was among the first generation that was raised on iPads. And before that, there was a generation raised on TV. And I feel like as more technologies open up, we lose our grasp of reality more and more. some could say that television is also the influencing machine, presenting thoughts that are not our own and forcing us to hallucinate vividly while staring at a box. And indeed, it's very interesting about the mental effects of these technologies. In 1976, David Bowie released a song, TVC-15, which was based off of a hallucination Iggy Pop had when he was on cocaine, that a television had swallowed his girlfriend. In TVC-15, a similar thing happens. The narrator is obsessed with his television. He brags about all the specs it's got, the RGB, the 4 channels, stereo, and he brings his girlfriend home to watch TV one day, only for the TV to literally swallow her. Now it becomes clear that it's not a metaphor. The television really does swallow his girlfriend. His girlfriend just gets up and jumps in there, and the narrator never sees her again. He kneels before the TV and prays to it every night, hoping that it'll give his girlfriend back, but the TV can't listen to him. It's a TV. So another common thing in Denpa games and other pieces of media is horror elements, not just otaku and moe aspects. I prefer the horror elements, honestly. It's very Kafka-esque, in which I mean the TV swallowing your girlfriend and not giving it back ever is very similar to one day being transformed into a monstrous vermin. And no matter what kind of meaning you try to rise from it, it's ultimately meaningless. There's no changing back either. There's no reason to it. There's no reason for it. There's no way out. So once again, as someone who was raised on TV, forced to see these machines rise up and swallow humankind, it is very strange and very ominous thinking that, like, if these devices really were evil, there is no way to escape. And many other works outside of Denpa have exploited this fear as well. Analog horror, especially, has become pretty popular on YouTube. For example, Local 58, which I remember watching it at lunch in high school and being like terrified and shivering for the rest of the day. Because once again, it preys on my old fear of EAS alarms. And then it also takes that fear even further by expressing that maybe one day something really bad will happen and the TV will have a profound effect on it. For example, my favorite episode, Contingency, takes place in what I believe is the 1970s, in the Cold War era, during Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency. In it, the television appears to be hacked, and a broadcast message appears telling the citizens of America, that the country has basically been compromised. The army has lost, and a force stronger than the United States has made itself apparent, and it was invading the country as they speak. And the only thing that the normal citizens of the United States can do is find the nearest gun and off themselves and off their children. Now, it is revealed at the end of the video that the message is a hoax, and the television station, the titular Local 58, apologizes for any confusion it may have caused. But it can be interpreted that many people had not lived long enough to watch the end of the broadcast and see that the message is actually a hoax. They may not be alive to see it. So once again, like, television technology is pretty scary. I'm not quite sure how to put it, because technology has that profound effect on the human way of living. We can't live, even 50 years ago, we couldn't live without TV, radio. Nowadays, we can't live without internet, power, electricity. So, without it, I believe our sense of humanity would be completely lost. We have evolved to the point to mold ourselves to the fact that technology exists, that the internet exists. We would not be able to live without it. It's already become too late. Us who were raised on television and the internet, the children who were raised on the internet as well, on dopamine, on bright colors, on flashing lights. This is unrelated, but there's some people who can't drink regular water. They always need some kind of flavoring to it, which it may sound irrelevant, but I promise it's a perfect metaphor for it. Because how can you not drink regular water today? But you would not, if you could not drink regular water today, you could not survive in the 1800s. So indeed, we have evolved to the point where we can no longer drink regular water. We can no longer live in ordinary reality. We must always kneel to the force of the influencing machine that is television. And Denpa is the perfect exploitation of that fear into a sort of aesthetic and style, which exists not only in otaku culture, but is also becoming prominent in Western culture as well, with the rise of analog horror, etc. So I'm really interested in this aesthetic, this style. And as I said before, I plan to make video games in the future, and I want to not exploit the style, I want to use this style in order to make games that are scary, I suppose. Games that would terrify me, because, when it comes to horror, I don't like regular horror. I don't like jump scares or mascots. All I want is that psychological, Kafka-esque fear nailed into me. So, and I like Denpa visual novels as well. Things like The Song of Saya, which exploit that psychological fear as well. I believe those are better than most modern horror games. So I hope that this interests you as much as it interests me. I'm going to finish recording now. I'm not sure how to sign off, but thank you for watching if you've made it this far.